"She is the price of your debt, Belhurst," said Josephine's father, pushing her forward into the great library as one pushes a coin across a gaming table, "and cheap at that. 19, healthy and biddable. Take her and we are square." The Duke of Belhurst did not rise. He sat in a tall chair by the fire with his long hands folded upon the head of a black cane, and he turned his face toward them. Not quite at them, Josephine noticed, but a degree to the side, as a man listens rather than looks, and when he spoke his voice was low and precise and colder than the January dark outside. "You have gambled away everything else you owned, Marsh," the Duke said, "and now you offer me your daughter to cover the last of it. Tell me, does she know she is being sold, or have you neglected that courtesy as well?" "She knows her duty," her father said. "That was not my question." The Duke's head turned another degree, and Josephine understood all at once with a small cold shock, the thing the whole county whispered and her father had flung at her that morning as though it were a mercy. The Duke of Belhurst could not see. His eyes, dark and steady, did not fix on her face, they rested near it, and yet she had the unnerving sense of being more thoroughly attended to than she had ever been in her life. "Girl, come here. Not you, Marsh, you will hold your tongue." The girl. Josephine crossed the room. She had spent the whole freezing carriage ride bracing herself for a monster. The county called him the blind duke and said it in the tone reserved for the mad and the cursed, and her father had spoken of him as one speaks of a debt collector, and she had promised herself she would not weep, whatever he was. She stopped before his chair. "I am here, your grace," she said, and was pleased that her voice did not shake. "So you are," he tilted his head. "You are frightened, but you are hiding it well, which is more than most manage in this room. Give me your hand. No, do not flinch. I mean to read it, since I cannot read your face." She put her hand into his. His fingers closed over it, cool and sure, and moved lightly across her palm, her knuckles, the callus at the base of her thumb. "You work," he said. "This is not a lady's idle hand, and you are thin. You have not been fed as a gentleman's daughter ought. Your father has been losing at the tables a good deal longer than he admits." He released her hand. "What is your name? He has not troubled to tell me." "Josephine, your grace." "Josephine." He said it as though testing the shape of it. Then to her father in a voice gone flat and dangerous. "Get out. Your debt is discharged. My man will bring you the papers. You will not enter this house again, and you will not write to your daughter, and if I hear that you have gambled so much as a shilling on her memory, I will ruin you so completely that the workhouse will seem a kindness. Go." Her father went. He did not so much as look back at her, and Josephine stood in the great warm library beside the fire and the blind duke, and understood that she had been bought and paid for and abandoned, all within a quarter of an hour. "He is gone," the Duke said after the door had shut. "You may sit. You need not stand in my presence like a servant awaiting orders. I have enough of those." She sat. He was quiet a moment, his handsome unlined face turned toward the fire he could not see but plainly felt, and when he spoke again the coldness had gone out of his voice and left something graver behind. "Understand me, Josephine. I did not want a wife bought with a debt, and I will not pretend the manner of it is anything but shameful. Your father is a scoundrel, and I have known it for years. But the debt was real, and had I refused you, he would have sold you elsewhere to a man who would have thanked me for the bargain and used you far worse. So I bought the debt, and I will marry you because it is the only way I know to keep you out of hands crueler than mine. That is the whole ugly truth of it. I will not lie to you, now or ever. It is the one thing I can offer you that your father never did." Josephine looked at him, at the proud, straight carriage of him, the stillness that she had taken for coldness, and now saw was a kind of vigilance. A man reading a world he could not see and missing very little of it, and something in her chest, braced so hard against a monster, loosened all at once. "Then I will tell you a truth in return, your grace," she said. "I came here expecting a beast. I find I have been sold to the first person in a very long while who has bothered to notice I was hungry." The Duke of Belhurst went very still, and then slowly his stern mouth curved and he laughed a low, surprised, rusty sound as of a thing long out of use. "You have a tongue in your head," he said. "Good. I cannot abide the biddable ones your father promised. We shall get on better than either of us feared." They were married a fortnight later, and in that fortnight Josephine learned a great many things about the man the county pitied and pitied him not at all thereafter. She learned that he was not helpless, and would suffer no one to treat him as though he were. He moved through Belhurst Hall with a sure, unhurried stride, reading the rooms by the fall of light against his skin, by the echo of his own footfall, by 100 small signs she had never known a person could read. He ran his estate with a rigor that made his steward sweat. He knew his accounts to the shilling, and had caught out 2 dishonest agents in as many years by the simple expedient of listening to what men's voices did when they lied. He rode carefully, on a steady old mare who knew the paths, but he rode, and dared anyone to tell him he should not. He was, Josephine came to understand, one of the sharpest and most capable men she had ever met, and the only thing he could not do was see. And he had arranged his entire life so that this single fact commanded as little of it as a man's will could contrive. She learned, too, why he had turned so cold at her father's contempt. The blindness had come in his 20s, a fever that had taken his sight in a single terrible week, and the world that had once bowed to the young Duke of Belhurst had drawn back from him as from something broken. The eligible girls whose mothers had schemed for him now steered their daughters away. Friends grew awkward. The county which had feared his rank now pitied his affliction, and he had discovered that pity was a colder thing to live under than fear, and had built his stern reputation deliberately, as a wall precisely so that no one would ever again look at him the way people looked at the pitiable. He told her this himself, on one of the evenings before the wedding, sitting by the fire in his flat, unsparing way. "I would rather be feared than pitied," he said. "Pity says a man is less than he was. Fear at least grants he is still to be reckoned with. You will find, Josephine, that I am to be reckoned with." "I never doubted it," she said. "You read my hand across a room and emptied my father's pockets in a quarter of an hour. I should be a fool to pity you, your grace. I have not the leisure. I am too busy being impressed." He turned his face toward her, and there was something in his still expression she was learning to read as he read the world by its small signs. And what it said was that no one, in the whole long guarded decade of his blindness, had spoken to him quite like that. They were wed in the chapel at Belhurst, and it was a quiet wedding, and Josephine found that she went to it not with the dread of a girl sold for a debt but with a strange, settled gladness, as one goes toward a thing that has begun, against all sense, to feel like home. That night he came to her rooms, and he was as honest there as he was in all things. He stood at the door a moment, tall and grave in the candlelight he could not see, and said, "I will not come further than you wish me to tonight or any night. You were bought, and I will not have you feel you were bought twice. If you would rather I bid you good night and go, I will go, and there will be no reproach in it, and the door between our rooms will stay as shut as you please for as long as you please. You need only say." Josephine looked at her husband, at the proud head, bent a little toward her voice, at the offered honesty of him, the fierce, careful dignity that would not take even what the law and the church now freely gave him unless she gave it too, and she crossed the room to him, and took his hand, and laid it against her cheek so that he might read what her face was doing. "I am smiling, your grace," she said softly. "You cannot see it, so I am telling you. I am smiling, and my door is not shut, and I did not marry a monster after all. Stay." His fingers moved gently over her cheek, her smile, the corner of her eye where no tear was, and whatever he read there made his own stern face gentle at last. "Ellery," he said. "My name is Ellery. I should like my wife to use it." And he drew her to him, and the candle guttered low, and the honest dark that he lived in every hour of his life became, that night, a thing they shared. The days that followed undid them both, gently, into something neither had thought to hope for. She began to be his eyes without ever once making him feel he needed them. She learned this art quickly, for it was only a finer form of the honesty he prized. She did not announce the world to him as one announces it to the helpless. She wove it into their talk, easily, so that he had it without ever being made to feel he lacked it. The heron on the lake this morning stood on one leg the whole while we walked. She would say, "The great fool," and he would laugh. Or, "You have a smudge of ink on your left cuff and you look very severe about it," and he would grow easier under her seeing than he had ever been under his own guardedness. And he, for his part, gave her the thing she had never had in her father's house. He attended to her wholly, with all the ferocious attention of a man who reads the world by listening. He knew her moods by her step on the stair before she said a word. He knew when she was tired, when she was troubled, when she had wept in private over the father who had sold her and never written. He knew it and did not shame her with it, only drew her down beside him and held her hand and let her be sad, and told her, once, the only true thing that could be said. He did not know what he was throwing away. It is the one piece of luck in this wretched business, that a fool gambled away the best thing he owned, and I was the one holding the winning hand. She fell in love with him somewhere in those weeks, and could not afterward have said the hour. Perhaps it was the morning she came upon him in the music room, running his hands over the strings of an old harp, coaxing out a melody with a delicacy that stopped her in the doorway. Perhaps it was the evening he faced down a sneering visitor, some old acquaintance come to marvel condescendingly at the blind Duke's bought bride, and demolish the man's pretensions in 3 cold sentences, and then, the door shut, turned to her and said, dry as dust, was he as red in the face as he sounded? I do so like to picture it, until she laughed till she cried. Or perhaps it was simply the slow accumulation of 100 honest days, beside a man who had promised never to lie to her, and never had. She told him in the end because she had learned from him that the truth was the one gift worth giving. She told him on a spring evening in the garden, her hand tucked in his arm, guiding him along the path he knew perfectly well by heart, and let her guide him along anyway, because he had confessed that he liked the excuse to be led by her. I have a true thing to tell you, she said, in your own fashion. I am listening, I am always listening, it is my chief accomplishment. I came here 19 years old and terrified, sold to pay a debt, braced for a monster, Josephine said. And I have fallen in love with my husband entirely and past all reason, and I find I am glad Ellery of the wicked chance that brought me to your door, because a kinder road would never have led me to the one man who ever truly saw me. Her voice caught. You cannot see, and you have seen me more clearly than anyone in my whole life. I love you. That is my true thing. I have been carrying it about for a month, and it has grown too large to carry alone. The Duke of Belhurst stopped on the garden path. He turned to her and lifted his hand and laid it against her cheek in the way that had become theirs, reading the smile, the tears, the whole truth of her face by touch, and what he read there made his own composure break at last, wholly, in a way the county would never have believed of the cold, blind Duke. I have loved you, he said, low and unsteady, since the hour you told me I had bought the first person in years to notice you were hungry. I did not dare say it. I have spent a decade making certain no one could pity me, and I could not bear that you might stay out of pity or duty or the debt. I would rather have had you at arm's length forever than have you and always wonder. So I said nothing, and hoped like a coward, and was more afraid of your kindness than I have ever been of anything. He drew a breath. Say it once more. I cannot see your face, and I want to be quite certain of it. I love you, Josephine said. I love you, and I am not staying for pity or duty or debt. I am staying because I would choose you freely out of the whole of the world and choose you again tomorrow, blind or seeing, feared or not, for as long as I live. He kissed her there in the spring garden, and Josephine felt the last of the cold wall come down, the wall he had built so carefully against a pitying world, and behind it there was only the man proud and gentle and honest in hers. They were, in the years that followed, the happiest and least conventional couple in 3 counties. He never once let the world treat him as less, and she never once let him feel he was. She was his eyes without robbing him of his sight of her, and he was her whole seeing heart. He ran his estate the sharper for having her voice at his side. She blossomed the fuller for having, at last, a man who attended to every word she spoke. The county, which had pitied him and pitied her, gave up the habit entirely. for there was plainly nothing in the marriage to pity and a great deal, if one were honest, to envy. And on the fine evenings, walking the garden paths he knew by heart, her hand in his arm, he would sometimes turn his grave, handsome face toward the sound of her voice and say the truest thing he knew: that a scoundrel had once tried to sell him a biddable girl to cover a debt, and had, in the one useful act of his ruined life, handed the blind Duke of Belhurst the only thing he had ever needed and never dared to want: a wife who saw him whole, and loved what she saw, and would not, for all the world, have had him any other way.